You could never have imagined that the worst moment of your professional life would occur in a building you owned. Yet sometimes people who abuse their power do so with complete confidence. They do it without any remorse. Logan Shaw was certain of all three things when he reported Ammani Rivers to the police one morning in October at the Golden Haven Hotel. He had been the general manager for 14 months. He had generated significant convention revenue. In his estimation, he had elevated the property's profile among the clientele he deemed appropriate for a facility of this caliber. He was wrong about almost everything. He was about to find out just how wrong. It wouldn't be long now. Ammani Rivers was 38 years old, very dark-skinned, and possessed a particular elegance that came not from wealth but from knowing exactly who he was for decades and not allowing others' assumptions to affect that knowledge. She had transformed Golden Haven from a dilapidated historic property into one of Savannah's most prestigious addresses. She had sourced the marble floors, selected the crystal chandelier hanging in the lobby, and hired Gloria James to oversee the cleaning crew and maintain the brass fixtures, which Gloria polished each morning with the meticulous care of someone who understood that perfection lies in the details. She had opened the hotel 7 years ago, alongside her late husband, with a golden bell he had found at a real estate sale. Every morning, she rang this bell as a special ritual, announcing the start of the day and declaring the hotel her own. Her father had worked here as a doorman 40 years before she bought the building. He had believed in what the building could become, even though the owners resented seeing him there. Now his daughter owned the building and had achieved what he believed in, and even more. That Tuesday morning at 7:14 a.m. she entered through the side entrance using her personal keycard. She was wearing a white t-shirt, jeans, and a black cap. It wasn't her usual work attire. She had a vendor contract issue to resolve before the day's activities began, and as she did most things, she had come early to take care of it herself. Directly, without ceremony. She had come before anyone needed to recognize her to use her authority. The lobby was quiet at that hour. Breakfast service had just begun on the far wall. A few early rising guests were passing by with their coffees. Patrick, the receptionist who had been working at the hotel for 8 months and performing well, was reviewing the night's logs at the counter. The 2 security guards next to the entrance had been working at Golden Haven for 3 years. Ammani stopped at the reception desk to check the night notes. As he did every day, he leaned forward slightly and stood in front of the desk while reading. Logan Shaw had already passed through the lobby when he saw him. Over the years, in environments where people made quick judgments about who belonged, he had learned to read the rapid changes in expression on his face. First came recognition. He knew his face, had seen him at meetings, sat across from him at his desk. Then came assessment. Then something that turned into a decision within 2 seconds. He looked at the security guards. He looked at the guests on the far wall. He smoothed his jacket with both hands. "Excuse me," he said, loud enough to be heard. "Can I help you?" he asked. Patrick at the desk remained motionless. "Good morning, Logan," said Ammani. "I don't believe you have a reservation," he said, still raising his voice. He was still playing the part for the people in the lobby. "This is a private facility," he said. "I own this facility," Ammani said. The expression on his face didn't change. Ammani would return to this later. Ammani's words had made no difference to him, creating no pause or moment of real thought. Patrick had already made up his mind, and Ammani's words had passed him by without affecting him. "I must ask you to leave," he said, "or I will call security," he continued. "You can call security," Ammani said calmly. "They work for me," she replied. He turned to the 2 security guards standing by the entrance. "Please remove this woman from the lobby," Logan said. Neither guard moved. Both knew exactly who Ammani Rivers was. One of them, a man named Darnell, who had been working the morning shift for 3 years, looked at Logan with an expression that clearly stated he would not carry out this order. How could he? Logan had asked for the impossible. Eventually the truth would come out one way or another. Logan took out his phone and dialed 911. Ammani stood at the counter and waited. He was calm, as he always was in difficult situations. He wasn't emotionless, but he was determined to face whatever happened with complete composure. He noticed Patrick moving his hand under the table and grabbing his personal phone. He noticed a woman next to the elevator clearly raising her phone, positioning herself to get a clear shot. He noticed the guests at the far wall had stopped eating. Ammani noticed everything and waited. 2 police officers arrived within 6 minutes. Young officers, unfamiliar with the facility, responding to a report of unauthorized entry at a hotel reception. Logan met them at the entrance and, turning his back partially, spoke briefly in a low voice. He was clearly complaining, and he wanted the situation resolved immediately. Ammani watched from behind the counter. He didn't move toward them. He didn't raise his voice. He stood where he was and waited for them to come to him. "Mani, we received a report of unauthorized entry. Can you explain why you are here?" asked the police officers. I am the owner of this hotel, Ammani said, clearly and without rushing. My name is Ammani Rivers. I am the sole owner and chief operator of the Golden Haven Hotel. My office is behind the door with my name on it. I entered the building through the side entrance at 7:14 this morning using my personal keycard, which the entry system will confirm. Patrick at this desk knows who I am. Both of your security guards know who I am. My name is on the deed, the operating license, the business registration, and all the important contracts this property has, Ammani said. Despite presenting such clear evidence, there was still doubt. The officer looked at Logan, who stood beside him with his arms slightly crossed. He entered without a reservation, Logan said. He's not a registered guest or a scheduled employee, he replied. He clearly wanted Ammani to be detained. Ammani's words were definitely not convincing to him, but he was about to face a harsh reality. I don't need a reservation to enter my own building, Ammani said, still addressing the officer. I need the keycard I used at 7:14 this morning, she repeated. The officer's partner had taken a step back. The look on his face showed he was quickly reassessing the situation and coming to an uncomfortable conclusion. He was slowly realizing there was a misunderstanding, but he remained cautious. The first officer made a decision he would regret for a long time. Mom, I would ask you to step outside with us while we handle this, they said. This conversation was one of the biggest mistakes the police officers made. They were heading down a path of no return. Ammani met the officer's gaze for a moment. I would like to state clearly for all recording devices currently active in this lobby that I am the owner of this property. I have committed no crime. I have proven my ownership fully and verifiably, and I am complying with this request even though I object, she said, and paused for a moment. I also need your badge numbers, he requested. That way he could easily file a criminal complaint against them. As they were escorted toward the entrance across the lobby, the room was completely silent. Every guest, every staff member, everyone present watched him walk across the marble floors of his own hotel toward the door. A few phones were picked up. The woman next to the elevator shifted her position to protect her angles. Patrick stood at the desk, watching, his jaw clenched. This was truly an unbelievable event. Everyone began asking each other how a business owner could be escorted out like this despite all the evidence. Logan Shaw stood next to the reception desk, adjusting his jacket. Gloria James arrived at 7:40, 15 minutes after Ammani was removed from his own building. She stood at the lobby entrance and surveyed the scene. Logan's expression, Patrick's expression, guests still discussing the event they had just witnessed in hushed, anxious voices. Gloria had worked here since the hotel opened. She had polished every brass fixture in the building hundreds of times. She had welcomed every guest, managed every cleaning crisis, and upheld Ammani's standards with the devotion of someone who believed in what Golden Haven represented. She was like one of the hotel's main supporting columns. She knew every detail of everything that had happened from the past to the present. She looked at Logan Shaw for exactly 2 seconds. Then she took out her phone and called Deshaun Rivers. Deshaun Rivers entered the police station 30 minutes after Gloria's call. 31 years old, broad-shouldered, he had the military bearing of someone who had learned over 8 years that the most effective response to a crisis was not the loudest, but the most decisive. He had 3 things with him: a folder of company documents he had taken from the hotel safe, a printed copy of the property deed he had obtained from the hotel's digital record system on the way, and Rachel Chen's voice coming through his earpiece. Rachel Chen had been working in civil rights law for 19 years. She had handled 43 wrongful arrest cases, winning 38 of them and settling 4 on terms entirely favorable to her clients. During the trip, she asked Deshaun 4 specific questions, told him exactly what to say to the receptionist, and said she would be there in 35 minutes. She arrived in 28 minutes. The receptionist had the expression of a man who had realized an hour ago that something had gone seriously wrong and was now calculating the path of least resistance for the next few hours. Rachel neatly stacked 5 documents on his desk without preamble: the property deed, the business license, the company registration, the business tax return showing Ammani Rivers as the sole owner, and a printout of the keycard entry log showing entry through the side entrance at 7:14 that morning. Everything was right there, with all the necessary information and documentation. My client is the owner and sole operator of the Golden Haven Hotel, Rachel said. When your officers received a deliberately false, unauthorized entry report from an employee acting outside their legitimate authority, my client was standing at his own reception desk. Despite my client clearly identifying himself and immediately verifying his identity, I demand the name and badge number of the officer who detained him, copies of both officers' body camera footage in accordance with public records law, and my client's immediate release, Rachel said. She had gotten straight to the point. Her demands were very clear. She got what she wanted. Ammani was released 40 minutes after Rachel's arrival. Outside the station, Deshaun hugged his mother for a long time without saying anything. "How are you?" he asked. "I'm angry," she said. "And I'm completely sure about what will happen next," she replied. On the way back to Golden Haven, they were in an uncomfortably purposeful silence. It was the silence of two people who had already decided what to do and were just moving to carry it out. Gloria had spent the 40 minutes productively. The night's security camera footage had been copied to 4 separate drives in a cloud backup system. Patrick had written a detailed witness statement, complete with timestamps and signatures, describing everything he had observed from the reception desk, from the moment Logan called the police until Ammani was taken outside. 2 security guards, Darnell and Marcus, had given written statements about the incident. In their statements, they specifically mentioned that Logan had told them to escort Ammani out, but they had refused because they knew his identity, and that this refusal had occurred before Logan decided to call 911. 4 guests had come to the front desk to leave their contact information as witnesses. The woman recording near the elevator had emailed the footage she had captured to the hotel's contact address, adding the note, "I watched everything. I thought you should have this." It was good customer service. Ammani sat in his office and methodically reviewed everything, watching the footage first. The lobby cameras had recorded Logan's behavior from 2 angles as the officers arrived: his position with his back partially turned toward Ammani, his low voice, his arms slightly crossed as Ammani spoke directly to the officers. The woman's personal recording captured the same scene from a 3rd angle, including the moment Logan adjusted his jacket after Ammani was escorted out. Ammani watched this twice. Then he opened the file of documents he had been preparing for 3 weeks: human resources complaints from cleaning staff, sales meetings held without his knowledge, patterns of behavior displayed towards service workers in the lobby. She added the morning's events to this file in a careful and realistic manner. Ammani had enough information and documentation in her hands. With this evidence, they could do whatever they wanted to them. In other words, they were legally very strong. Has something like this ever happened to you before? If it had, what would your reaction be? Rachel joined him 2 hours later. Working at Ammani's desk for 90 minutes, they prepared the termination file and the lawsuit simultaneously. "False police report," Rachel said, examining the notebook. "Slander. Civil rights violation under the Public Accommodation Law. Misuse of emergency services. A documented pattern of discriminatory behavior against staff. We have 4 independent witness statements, 3 video recordings from different angles, the entry log, statements from 2 security guards, and our documents from 3 weeks ago," she said, looking up. "There's nothing missing," she continued. "I want it done correctly," Ammani said. "Completely. Nothing should be disclosed anywhere. Everything must be confidential," he said. "No disclosure. As clean as possible for these types of cases," he said. Logan Shaw was dismissed from his job at 3:15 that afternoon. Ammani delivered the notice in his office, in Rachel's presence, and with a written record. He was calm and cool-headed, as he had been all day. He wasn't cold. He wasn't acting like a victor. He wasn't showing off to anyone. He was just right. He had defended his rights because he was right. Logan offered a few responses. He suggested that the morning's incident was a misunderstanding stemming from Ammani's unusual attire. He argued that any reasonable person in his position would have taken the same precaution upon seeing an unfamiliar woman in casual clothes at the desk. He claimed his intent was to protect the property, not to cause harm. He was clearly lying. Ammani let him finish without interrupting and didn't respond to any of it. When Logan finished, he slid the termination papers across the desk. "Your personal belongings will be packed by HR and can be picked up tomorrow morning at 9. We disabled your access credentials this afternoon. Official documents will be delivered to you by courier within 48 hours, he said. 20 minutes later, he left the building, passing through the lobby as afternoon check-ins continued. Gloria was arranging evening flowers at the front desk. Patrick was registering arrivals at reception. Security guards were at their posts. No one stopped working. No one watched him leave. The official complaints were filed at 8 o'clock the next morning. Rachel submitted them simultaneously to the police department's Civil Oversight Board, the State Civil Rights Commission, and the city's Human Rights Office, attaching all the documents to each complaint. The complaint against the intervening officers focused on the fact that, despite Ammani clearly and repeatedly identifying himself, immediately obtainable corroborating information from hotel staff in the lobby, and an entry log that could be checked within minutes, no action was taken to verify Ammani's stated identity. The footage prompted a faster response from the department than either had anticipated. An internal investigation was announced within 36 hours. Both officers were subject to administrative reassignment, with official notes added to their personnel records. The officer who processed Ammani's detention submitted an internal memo acknowledging that the lack of verification was not merely an individual error by the intervening officers, but a systemic deficiency in the unit's procedures. This memo was added to the Oversight Committee's official records. the lawsuit against Logan Shaw proceeded. His attorney contacted Rachel within 8 days, proposing a confidential settlement that included a condition of no fault. Rachel explicitly and clearly rejected the no-fault condition in her written response and continued to reject it in the next 3 rounds of negotiations until the condition was completely removed from the offer. The case was settled 4 months after the incident. The terms of the settlement included the official determination of discriminatory conduct, monetary compensation to Ammani, mandatory civil rights training for Logan before seeking any future public management position, and a written acknowledgement entered into the public record. This was not a quiet settlement. Ammani had made it clear from the outset that quiet solutions served only to protect the next person who would be harmed by the same pattern of behavior, and that no one was interested in protecting anyone from the consequences of their actions. A policy update released by the police department 3 months after the settlement required officers to make reasonable verification efforts before responding to reports of trespassing on commercial property. This change was one that 3 civil rights organizations in the city had been formally requesting for several years. The department's statement attributed the change to a comprehensive review of procedures. Rachel stated in a public comment that the review was prompted by a specific case and that the specificity of that case was important. Patrick was promoted to senior desk officer. Security guards Darnell and Marcus, who had refused Logan's orders, received official commendations in their personnel files. Gloria's family signed a favorable lease for a small cafe space on the corner of the lobby that Ammani had been planning to develop for 2 years. Construction began 6 weeks after the agreement and was completed as planned. The opening ceremony was small. Staff, regular guests, Rachel, Deshawn, and Gloria's extended family filled all the available chairs. A choir from the neighborhood church filled the restored lobby with a warmer sound than when it rose and fell from the chandelier. Ammani gave a short speech. He spoke of his father, who had worked in this building as someone else's employee, polishing the floors and believing in the building's future. He spoke of what it meant to build something with his own hands and in his own name, and of not allowing others' assumptions about who belonged where to dictate reality. He spoke of the staff who had documented, witnessed, and unwittingly demonstrated resolve. Patrick's phone lying silently under the table, Darnell and Marcus refusing an illegal order, Gloria arriving and immediately understanding what needed to be done. He didn't mention Logan Shaw. He didn't need to. At the end of the ceremony, she lifted the golden bell from its stand next to the reception desk. This bell was the one her late husband had found and given her in the opening year. And since that day, she had rung it every morning to announce in a special way that the day had begun, and that the hotel was hers and would remain so. She held it in her hand for a moment and felt its familiar weight. Then she rang it once, and its clear, bright sound echoed through the lobby, reaching every corner of the space she had built. The marble floors her father believed in, the brass fixtures Gloria polished every morning, the chandelier from Vienna, the table Patrick watched with quiet pride. The sound echoed for a long time before fading away, leaving a silence that felt less like something ending and more like something regained. The cafe opened its doors. Gloria's granddaughter served the first coffee. The afternoon continued. Golden Haven was a place built by Ammani Rivers. It was that way before Tuesday morning, it was that way now, and it would be that way tomorrow. And a report misinterpreted at the wrong time in the wrong way did not change that, because things that truly belong to you cannot be taken by people who think they know the truth better.